Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Anthony Pascal. Election day is quickly approaching, and while the race for president has dominated the headlines, we also have a local contest for Congress. New York One and the Staten Island Advance are teaming up to bring you a debate featuring the two candidates vying for the 11th district seat that makes up all of Staten Island and parts of Brooklyn. Republican Dan Donovan is the incumbent in the race. He's being challenged by Democrat Richard Reichard. I'd like to welcome both the candidates and say thank you very much for being here, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I also want to introduce our panelists who will be asking the questions during the debate. My colleague here at New York One, Staten Island Borough reporter Amanda Farinacci, and from the Staten Island Advance, political reporter Rachel Shapiro. Now to our format. This debate will be divided into 4 segments. Long-form questions, our lightning round, in which questions require a one-word answer, and then we'll turn the tables and have the candidates ask each other a question. We'll finish the debate by giving each candidate an opportunity for a closing statement. So let's begin with the long-form questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. Amanda, you will get the first question. We flipped a coin before the debate to see who will go first. Mr. Reichard, you will get the first question.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming out here today. This presidential election has been characterized as one of the most divisive in American history. The tone of this presidential election has been downright nasty. Both of you have pledged to support the candidates from your respective parties. My question is, should your opposing candidate become elected, how you plan to work with that person if elected in Congress, and also how you see the future of Congress moving ahead given what we've just experienced in this election cycle?
Well, if Donald Trump happens to be elected, yes, I would support him, because basically you have to support the results of an election. If a member of Congress, I would advocate for my positions in making sure the legislation I want passed is supported. I understand that the president has a lot of power, but in Congress we have an equal role. There's an equal branch of government, so I would stand up for the people of Staten Island, people of Brooklyn who elected me, for what they elected me for.
And Mr. Donovan?
You know, we live in the greatest democracy in the world. We've survived 240 years of democracy, the longest one in history. Whoever wins the presidency, our nation's going to be okay. And if Secretary Clinton wins, I've already worked across the aisle. Chuck Schumer, our United States Senator, and I have done some great work in bringing back monies for transportation for New York City, getting the Zadroga health bill for our 9/11 workers passed. And so partisanship doesn't matter to me. It's what is good for the people that we represent. And if Secretary Clinton is the President of the United States, we'll work with her. I hope, because she's from New York, that she'll concentrate on a lot of our needs and listen to the New York delegation of what we would like to see happen in our nation. But I think no matter who wins, our country is going to be just fine.
Gentlemen, part of the question was about the tone of the race. I want to give you each a chance to talk about the type of campaign that the candidate whom you supported ran, and are you proud of that campaign? Mr. Reichard?
Yeah, my candidate, Hillary Clinton, she's been trying to talk about issues during this campaign. It's been drowned out by a lot of things that Donald Trump has said. In fact, the media seems to wait each day to see what he said yesterday so they can report on it today, which has drowned out the important issues of Social Security, Medicare, important issues of redoing our tax system to make it fair, which hasn't served the people well. But I think the media has to take some responsibility for the tone of this campaign. They have almost created Donald Trump, and they created this monster. They don't know what to do with him now.
Mr. Donovan, on the tone of the campaign.
I'm saddened by it. I've done teletown hall meetings. I've been to friendship clubs. I've spoken to voters. They're concerned about the economy. They're concerned about national security. They're concerned about paying their mortgages and paying their children's education. They don't care about the nonsense that we've been hearing. And I would prefer both candidates, because I think they've both done a disservice in this election by concentrating on things that the public doesn't care about, and that the next leader of the free world is going to be responsible for. So I'm saddened on both behalf of both candidates that I think the American public wants to hear, at least in these last 12 days, 10 days of this election, what they plan on doing to make their families' lives better, make the middle class be able to sustain the expenses that cost to live in this country, and how they're going to create a future for their children.
Congressman, the next question's for you from Rachel.
So what is the #1 burning issue that Congress should focus on in the new session?
The economy. job creation, tax reform. There are a lot of important issues, though, Rach. There's going to be immigration reform. We have to do something about immigration reform. National security, government's number one responsibility to its citizens is their safety. If we can't protect America from our enemies, the rest of the stuff's not going to matter. So there's a ton of things that we have to deal with. All priorities, all are going to take different lengths of time to do, and all are going to take a long period of time to do.
Mr. Reichard, the question to you.
Well, I think also the economy is the major issue in this campaign. The way I look at it is that we have to redo our tax structure, where basically the wealthy and the corporations get all the breaks in the tax system. We look at it with corporations like Mattel, pay no taxes. They make $2 billion in income, pay no taxes between 2010, 2014. Donald Trump actually says, yes, I don't pay any taxes, but the system allows me not to pay any taxes. I think we have to look at our tax system, make it fair, use that money to invest in America. I also believe that we need to address Medicare and Social Security. I believe what I want to do, what we Democrats want to do to strengthen it, and by lifting the cap on Social Security, allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices with drug companies is the way to go. And I oppose the Republican platform, which calls for phasing out Medicare and Social Security.
There is no Republican plan to phase out Social Security and Medicare. What's happening in Congress is a bipartisan committee has been put together to examine both Medicare and Social Security, because at its current status, it's not going to be sustainable for very, very long. Oh. And so what we've done, and it's a bipartisan committee, Republicans and Democrats are on it, they've asked to examine Social Security and Medicare, find out what we need to change to make it survive. Because right now it's scheduled to, the funds will be depleted in the next decade or two.
Do you have a path forward that you would like to see?
Yeah, I think I would like to see what they come up with. We've gotten experts. One of the things I found in Congress that I was very pleased to find is that so many people came there from different lifestyles, different careers. And we have a doctor's caucus that's looking at how to replace Obamacare. And we have people who have worked in various industries who are now together looking at the Social Security system and seeing how we can make it last. I'm not in favor of ever changing the benefits of those who are receiving them now or who are about to receive them. But if we don't do something, whether that's getting more people to contribute, and the way you get more people to contribute is get people to work. People who work pay into Social Security.
Mr. Reichard, I just want to give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, basically, if you look at what Paul Ryan has written on Medicare and Social Security, he's the leader of the Republicans in the House. Basically, he's put forth private accounts. He's put forth raising the retirement age to 70. In Medicare, he's put forth vouchers. He's put forth raising the eligibility age from 65 to 67. What I'm saying is that is their position going forward, and that's something I can ever support. So.
Very good. Next question will come from Rachel, and it will go to Congressman Donovan.
So New York and Staten Island in particular, as you know, is struggling with a heroin and opioid addiction epidemic. Other than sending federal monies to New York and to Staten Island in particular to fund programs, what should Congress be doing to address the issue?
They should pass my fentanyl bill. One of the things that we're finding with the overdoses is that unsuspecting abusers are ingesting fentanyl that's laced with the heroin, and that's what's causing our deaths. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is 50 times more powerful than heroin, and unsuspecting users are dying from ingesting this. I have a fentanyl bill that will increase the penalties for people who deal in fentanyl. It will lower the amounts of fentanyl that have to be sold or possessed in order to face those mandatory minimum sentences. And we're trying to ban pill presses. These are machines that people make counterfeit Oxycontin, Vicodins with that look like the real pill, except they're laced with fentanyl. And this is actually killing our young people in our country. So we should pass that. But I think what we did with the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, sending money to localities, was a good thing that Congress did. Rather than having bureaucrats in Washington dictate how people should address this problem, we gave money to the localities. Some localities needed more money for law enforcement. Some people needed more money for education. Some others needed for treatment. So what we did was we gave municipalities the money and told them to use it the way they see fit, whatever their needs were. That was a wonderful thing we did.
Mr. Reichard, the question to you.
Yeah, okay, with the fentanyl bill, my criticism is that basically the Advance ran an article on fentanyl last October. Why did it take so long to draft the bill? If you look at the Sandy bill, that bill took 2 months to put together. Much bigger bill, more than 3 times the size. This bill almost took 11 months to put together. People have to understand that there's only 16. Congress is only in session 16 days between when they go back after Veterans Day. If the bill is not passed, which means it has to go to committee by the end of December, when the new Congress goes into session, the bill dies. So, and as for the getting money to treatment, that money has not been allocated yet. There's $181 million that was in the bill that was authorized, but the allocation never happened. They left at the end of September, never fulfilling the $181 million commitment.
The bill was part of the continuing resolution that was passed that's funding the United States government right now.
But the question is, Mr. Reichard, what should Congress be doing specifically other than funding programs to address the heroin?
I believe if you look at what started this thing, the epidemic, was the prescription drugs. I know Dan, when he first went to Congress, he said he was going to submit a bill to make I-Stop federal. He never did. He did support the Governor Cuomo's initiative to have New York State join 37 other states, but that was December. There was nothing done between May, when he went into office, and December on that issue. We have to work with doctors prescribing medication. How do we prescribe pain medication to make sure people do not get addicted? Because that was really what started this whole thing. Purdue Pharmaceutical was big behind this, prescribing drugs like it was candy.
All right, we're going to leave that there then. Amanda, you'll get the next question for Mr. Reichard.
So in former Congressman Mike McMahon's re-election bid, the Affordable Care Act played a large role in his not getting re-elected. Obamacare is an issue that people in this district are really sensitive to. Given how much we've seen about the cost overruns and what the projected future looks like as it relates to Obamacare, my question for both of you is whether you think Obamacare needs to be reformed, does it need to be repealed, and or if you have plans to fix it, what type of ideas as we look towards the future of Obamacare?
Okay. Obamacare has given coverage to millions of people, so let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I think, yes, it has to be fixed. I support a public option. I don't know why there's opposition to but it is competition. Let's put a public option out there, because there are people in this country who don't have options. There may be only one medical plan they can go to and get coverage. As for the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare in New York State, if you look at New York State, before the premiums for individual policies are 55% lower now than they were prior to the Affordable Care Act. So it has benefited New York State, and that's where we live in New York State. But yes, we have to definitely address the cost. We addressed the coverage part of it. The Affordable Care Act never addressed the cost, because basically that's where the special interests are, the insurance companies and so on and so forth. That's what we have to address now.
This is such a disaster that providers are leaving the system. Health Republic was the biggest provider in New York State. They left. People in New York State now have one option. The president told us you'd be able to keep your doctors. People weren't able to keep their doctors. The Obama administration this week announced that premiums will increase 25% next year. And the only reason they announced it was because the insurance companies were about to tell America what a disaster this is. It has to be replaced. As I told you before, there's people from many walks of life who are in Congress, including many physicians. There's a doctors caucus in Congress who have formulated a replacement for Obamacare. They're waiting for the next administration, because we couldn't put it on this president's desk because he would never sign it into law. But you ask the people of New York State whether they like this system now. People who now have $25,000 a year premiums and a $6,000 deductible, people who used to go to a physician who can't afford to go any longer. Ask employers who now have to pay health care And when they decide that they'd be out of business, if they had to pay the health care premiums they're required to, they're letting employees go, or they're changing them to part-time workers so they're not required to pay the benefits. It's a disaster, and it will be replaced.
All right, we're going to have time for one more question in this segment. Rachel, it's going to be for Mr. Reichard.
We see quite often mass shootings happening in places where people should feel safe, in schools and malls. And we have people recommending changes to gun ownership laws where average Americans are afraid that their guns are going to be taken away from them. What changes, if any, would you support to current gun ownership laws?
Well, first of all, our gun laws, I think we need to close the loopholes that allow people to buy guns over the internet at gun shows. The Attorney General Schneiderman just released a report that almost 89% of the handguns recovered in crimes in New York State between 2010 and 2015 were purchased out of state. It isn't the New York State gun laws. It's the gun laws in other states. So people can buy guns easily in other states. So we have to close the loopholes. That's probably the number one thing we can do to make our streets safer.
Congressman?
Yeah, I am a sponsor of the no-fly, no-buy bill. If you're too dangerous to board an aircraft in our country, you're too dangerous to possess or own a gun. I also believe that universal background checks do not infringe on people's Second Amendment right. I'm a believer in the Second Amendment. The Supreme Court has told us that the Second Amendment interpretation that they have of it is that individuals have a right to possess guns, but with reasonable restrictions. And the restrictions of having a background check at gun shows or people who buy a gun over the internet, I don't think is a restriction that infringes on anyone's rights.
Amanda, we have time for one more quick question. Let's go to one more question, and it'll be you to Mr. Donovan.
Federal transit dollars did a lot for Staten Island some years back when Congressman McMahon was in office. I'm wondering if federal funding for transit projects were allocated again, where you identify the greatest need for Staten Island and for this district.
Well, the bill that we got passed, the Obama administration's proposal for the transportation funds was going to cut about $500 million out of New York's federal transportation monies. We got that restored, Chuck Schumer in the Senate and myself in the House. $3 million of that money every year for the next 5 years will be dedicated to the Staten Island ferry. Many of the ferries are old. They cannibalize one ferry to repair another ferry. We'll be able to buy new ferries. We'll be able to maintain the ones that we have. So that was a big expense. It was a big need, and it was something that we were able to fulfill. Back in 2010, the stimulus program that the Obama administration put out gave money all over the world. Now we're fighting for those dollars, and it's getting more and more difficult. The surface transportation bill, where these monies come from, a lot of my colleagues in different parts of the country don't have the needs that New York has. We have the
question, though, is if you get the money, where do you spend it?
Yeah, the ferry, and we have to look at the possibility of a North Shore rail, North Shore bus rapid transit, and a West Shore light rail system.
Mr. Reichard, that same question to you.
Well, I agree with Dan that the money needs to go to the North Shore Rail and the West Shore Railway. We also need to widen the Staten Island Expressway. There's parts of it that still aren't, there's a bottleneck. If those who take the expressway understand, we need the money to go there. The problem is that we need to be able to fund these initiatives, and right now there isn't enough money because we're always fighting for money. We're fighting for money to fund drug treatment. We're fighting for money for all the initiatives out there. That's why I said we need to look at our tax system and make it fair and get that money to invest in infrastructure.
Okay, it is now time to move along our lightning round, where both candidates will be asked a series of questions. We're going to ask gentlemen for a simple one-word answer to each of these questions. There is no passing. We're going to begin with Amanda. Amanda, first question.
Do you support building a wall, Mr. Donovan?
In a form.
Mr. Reichard.
In a form? No.
Should there be term limits for Congress?
No.
Yes.
Do you support legalizing recreational marijuana?
Mr. Reichard.
No.
No.
Give one word each to describe Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, and the race.
Sad.
Mr. Reichard.
Complex.
Should civil rights charges be brought against Officer Daniel Pantaleo for the death of Eric Garner?
Don't know.
I won't comment on anybody else's prosecution. I was a prosecutor for 20 years.
Give one word to characterize the city's response to Hurricane Sandy 4 years later.
Inefficient.
Democrat.
Who should we name one of the new ferries after? Mr. Reichard.
Who should we name? That's a good question. I never thought of it. I don't know, really, to tell you the truth.
Russell Timoshenko.
Do you support the city's program to sterilize deer on Staten Island?
Don't ask the deer. Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Reichard, do you support Colin Kaepernick not standing for the national anthem?
Yes.
He has a constitutional right to do that, yes.
Who is your political idol?
Me? Reagan.
Nelson Mandela.
Who is your favorite? What's your favorite Staten Island restaurant?
Well,
You're going to make enemies, yeah.
yeah. I live on the North Shore. I got to pick a North Shore restaurant. I don't know.
You can pick a restaurant, sir. Where was the last place you went out to eat?
That's an easier question.
I'm going to pass on that.
You're going to pass on that question.
Last place I ate was Pizza Giove.
What was the last book you read?
Arnold Palmer's A Life Well Played.
Lights out.
Last time you rode the ferry?
This morning.
Yeah. This month,
When was the last time you were called for jury duty?
when I was district attorney, 4 years ago, 5
Somehow
years
I
ago.
believe you got out of it.
No, I had to sit down there the entire time. I brought cases down with me, and then at 1 o'clock they let me go.
I think 1990.
That's it. Okay, moving on now to the part of the debate where we're going to ask each of the candidates to ask each other a question. Please restrict your questions to 20 seconds and your answers to 1 minute and 30 seconds. Mr. Reichard, you can ask your question.
Yes. Dan said he's co-sponsored the bill to prevent those on the no-fly list from obtaining weapons and explosives. But on December 10th, he voted against the motion that would have allowed that bill to come to the floor. Why?
It was a procedural vote. It had nothing to do with the actual voting on the bill. It was a motion to recommit. It's a ploy that the Republicans used when they were in the minority and the Democrats now use when they're in the minority to stop a vote on the bill that's being proposed for a vote at that time. The proposal to add that to the bill that we're supposed to vote on is knocked down because it's not germane to what we're voting on at that moment. So it wasn't a vote to vote for no fly, no buy. It was a vote to disrupt the procedure on the floor of the House that day.
Mr. Reichard, do you have a follow-up to that or no?
Basically, if you look at it, no gun legislation is going to make it to the floor as long as the Republicans control the House. They're against it, and that's what this whole sit down in the House was about. And that's what the people of this nation and the people of this city, the people of this district want. They want an up and down vote on gun legislation.
Congressman, does he have a point about the Republican Party?
No, there will be gun reform in some form, but because you're dealing with a constitutional amendment, sometimes it's more difficult and takes longer to put something in place that won't violate people's constitutional rights. But there will be gun reform. I found that the gun issue is actually geographic more than partisan. What's good in rural areas isn't good in urban areas. What's good in Wisconsin isn't good for Staten Island and Brooklyn in New York City.
Okay. It's your turn to ask Mr. Reichard a question.
If you're elected, Mr. Reichard, are you going to vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker?
If she's the person they put forward, yes.
Okay.
Is there another person that you...
She's the one we don't want, no.
Okay. It is time for our final part of this debate where we will allow each of the candidates to end with a 2-minute closing statement. We flipped a coin before this debate started to see who would go first and last. Mr. Reichard, you actually won the coin toss and chose to go last. Congressman Donovan, it is now your turn. You have 2 minutes for a closing remark.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you everyone for watching today. I've served this community for over 20 years. I was Chief of Staff at Borough Hall for 6 years, your Deputy Borough President for 2 years, your District Attorney for 12, and now I've been your Congressman for the last 17 months. I've served this community well, and in that short period of time that I've been in Congress, I've passed more bills than any other freshman except for 5, and those 5 people were there longer than I was. I was given the chairmanship of a committee that's so important to our community. On Homeland Security, my committee that I chair is in charge of terrorist acts and natural disasters. No community has suffered from either of those more than our community has. The tragedy in Lower Manhattan in 2001, and now 4 years later, the effects of Sandy is still being felt by our neighbors. I've accomplished a lot of things in this short period of time. We got the droga health care reform done. We got it appropriated so that every hero from 9/11 will be able to be concerned with their treatment and not how it's paid for, because the government's going to pay for it, and it's a permanent fund. We got JASTA done, allowing 9/11 families to sue foreign governments who were responsible for the deaths of their loved ones. We got transportation money refunded into New York, $500 million that was going to be taken out of New York's transportation money. We've funded treatment and education for opioid abuse, and my fentanyl bill will save lives when that's passed in Congress. National security is one of our #1 issues, and some of my Homeland Security bills protecting the securing of our city, funding to protect us from nuclear or radioactive attacks has been passed and signed into law. I've done a good job in the last 18 months, and with your help, I'll go back and do it for another 2. Thank you so much for listening.
Okay, Congressman Donovan, thanks. Mr. Reichard, you now have 2 minutes.
Okay, I want to thank you for inviting me today. Basically, this election is about choices. It's a choice between which tax system do you want. Do you want the current tax system that allows the wealthy and corporations to avoid paying their fair share? Or do we want a tax system that is fair so we can raise money to invest in America? This election is also about the future of Medicare and Social Security. I want to strengthen the current system for those in the future. I'm opposed to private accounts and raising the retirement age. I'm opposed to, in Medicare, vouchers and raising the eligibility age. This election is also about which party is going to control the agenda in the House. We have the Republican leadership in the House has voted against Sandy aid, almost to a person. Everybody in the leadership, they voted against the GROTA. And they will not allow any gun legislation to ever come to the floor because they are controlled by the NRA and the gun lobby. These are real choices out there. There's a choice between changes that we need, changes that we want, or going back to the current gridlock that we have in Congress. So I hope that I can get your vote on Tuesday, November 8th. Thank you.
Democrat Richard Reichard, Republican incumbent, Congressman Dan Donovan. Gentlemen, thanks so much. It is now up to the voters to decide. On Election Day, you will be asked to vote in not only this local contest here between the 2 congressional candidates, you'll also have the race for president. And don't forget, there are several uncontested races for local positions here on Staten Island that you will be asked to cast a ballot in. Amanda Farinacci, Rachel Shapiro, thanks so much for also helping out during this debate. And a reminder, if you'd like to see this debate in its entirety once again, you can catch it on our website, ny1.com, and this will also re-air on Saturday and Sunday at 2:30 in the afternoon right here on New York One. I'm Anthony Pascal. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget, this week on Staten Island during the same time slot, a special pre-election edition. Thanks for watching.